And it looks like we are officially live. Good morning and welcome to Money Matters, only going live on onedealaway.com every single morning at 7 a.m. New York time or Eastern Standard Time or Eastern Daylight Time. I don't know. Depends on how you look at it. And today we have a very, very important show. We're going to be covering all kinds of important news and information about kind of what's going on all the way to what can we expect to be happening with the US-China relationship and where is that going, and of course what impact that potentially could have for your money. We're also going to look at some of the tech giants who have been moving the market, as you may know already, and I think it's important to talk about what's going on in their little world and has been happening for the past few months. And of course we're going to be talking about what's going on in the VIX. And VIX is a volatility index that basically follows the volatility. And we're going to be spending a little bit of time learning how or if VIX impacts what's going on in the market. And can it tell a story of what can we expect? Where do we think that this is all going to go? Are we set for another crash? Are we set for another sort of even bigger bubble? Where's this all going to go and how can we prepare ourselves? So as you can see, it is a full show. We have all kinds of different things happening. I do want to welcome everybody watching this live only on onedealaway.com/live, of course. And if you're there, feel free to say hello in the chat. As always, we're going to do Q&A at the end of the show. If you're watching this on YouTube, do me a favor, smash the like button right now. Do subscribe and hit the bell button so you get notified every single time that the show shows up, which is every single day. All right, let's do this. And good morning. Today is Wednesday, July 22nd. And of course, we are doing this live as always, only on onedealaway.com. All right, I'm going to stop saying that because I'm sure that you're like, dude, we get it. Moving on. Okay, so let's go in and jump into the news right now. And I do want to start with the news coming from China. Well, it's not coming from China. It's coming from U.S., but it does talk about the Chinese and U.S. relationship and what's going on. As you know, we have been having a bit of a tit for tat thing kind of happening, right? It started with the trade war. It went into sort of like a currency war of sorts. Then there was a whole fiasco with the Hong Kong, which that ended up putting more potential problems and challenges between the two countries, and the additional issues. Of course, UK joined that, and so they too didn't like what's happening with Hong Kong, so they're stopping extradition and all kinds of different things. Preferential treatment for Hong Kong is going away and is going to be treated just like mainland China. We've also seen challenges when it comes to the tech stuff and how certain companies are being prohibited. We talked about Huawei, for example, the 5G and that kind of stuff, and that being banned and all of those components. And now we have an additional component that is happening, and that is that the U.S. is informing Beijing that they have to close the consulate in Houston, Texas, right away. They have 72 hours to vacate. And basically they are saying that they have to close it down. And China is basically saying this is an unprecedented escalation of hostilities, and Beijing will retaliate. And it was very interesting to kind of take a look at this stuff that typically, you don't see this type of stuff happening when their countries are at peace. If something has to vacate, it's typically because, some sort of war, pandemic, I don't know, the forces of nature that are set to destroy the land or whatever. And it's typically when the countries kind of prepare to sort of get into the hot war, as they say, that they sort of do this kind of stuff. And more often than not, it's actually the consulate that closes before the country actually asks them to leave. Asking the consulate to leave is often seen as a sort of unprecedented move, potentially signaling something much bigger on the other end. Now, there were additional reports, not necessarily in the article that I just showed you, that does talk about. Oh no, actually, it is in this article. Sorry, but it is. There has been claim that basically there are Chinese hackers that are trying to steal data regarding COVID-19 development, and that's kind of one of the moves potentially, allegedly, that the U.S. is using to say this is the reason why we want them to leave. But we'll see kind of how this goes. Like I said, this is not going well. Sorry, every day I keep trying to do the show with an open window, and every day I am proven that it doesn't really work. And you would think that one would learn, but you'd be grossly wrong, clearly. So what this basically signals is that there's something bigger brewing between U.S. and China, and that, as you may know, if you've been watching and following the channel for a while, that definitely concerns me about not just when it comes to the money and financial moves, but also when it comes to just overall sort of peace in the world kind of moves. So we'll see where this goes. My hope is that it's going to remain at the highly political trade sort of currency, that kind of stuff, because as painful as that could potentially be, that's a far better option than the alternative that does have more often than not potential to escalate into what is known as hot war. And we were kind of going down this path for months before COVID. Things have kind of slowed down and stopped because everybody was dealing with their own personal health pandemic crisis thing going on. And now it seems like we're right back at it. I don't know what you think. How do you feel about the whole piece, and where do you stand in this world of kind of where this may lead to? Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comments, because I really am interested to see what other people have to say and what their perception is about the whole what's happening around the world, and what people's opinions are and where people sort of stand. Beijing already responded by sanctioning some U.S. politicians to in China. But with the COVID and stuff, nobody's really traveling, anyways, except for predominantly in cars, because I can tell you, traffic has definitely picked up, and you potentially are seeing that as well. And so that's one of the things that is kind of interesting to see, that people are starting to leave and travel, at least here in US. My understanding is that the areas of Europe might be doing a similar thing, but I don't know if it's happening as much in the rest of the world. So let me know what you know about the whole thing. I do wanted to bring up one more thing, and I forgot to pull it up, which is why I'm looking for it right now. There we go. I just found it, and I wanted to share this with you. It wasn't part of the original plan to talk about it, but because I've mentioned Europe, you likely have heard that European Union has come up with a way to unitedly support the fight against the coronavirus. So they are issuing a sort of a EU global. It's not global as a world, but like for the EU, EU centric relief, a stimulus plan that all of the countries have allegedly agreed to. However, today on July 22nd, right? It is July 22nd. We're also seeing news that Italy wants out. Now, this is obviously just one part of the country. It's not the entire country going into it, but they are basically, their Italian senator is going into London to meet with British leaders to learn how they actually exited Europe, European Union, and Italy is basically saying they want to do the same thing, and they are basically saying that they were inspired by the UK's vote to exit the EU, and so they went to meet to learn how they did that and what Italy can do to bring this up on the ballot. We've been, well, some of us might have been expecting this stuff, but it's starting to develop, and they're saying that, we no longer want to be blackmailed by the countries that offend the great prestige of Italy. So Italy is basically going in and saying, we want to go in and look at how do we exit and what's happening. So they're not happy about what's been happening in Europe. And you can read more about this on RT. And I'm sure that there's other news providers that you can read this information on. But I thought it was really, really important for us to discuss it and maybe not go into depth. But we've been talking. I have been talking maybe about a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months now. I don't know. When you work, live, eat, do entertain yourself, everything from one location, days kind of start running together eventually. But we've been talking about the fights or the conflict between the North and the South within Europe, and how northern countries are challenged with saying, well, we don't want to carry the southern countries. Southern countries saying, you're imposing all of these restrictions on us that doesn't work for us. And so this has been sort of brewing for a little while, and it's kind of interesting to see that their next steps being taken. Next step is, let's learn from those that have done what we want to do, and then consider how do we put this on the ballot and get it voted. And the report was stating that there is a large number of population in Italy that are not happy with being in EU because of what's happening from the monetary and financial and economic stance. And so they don't want that to be happening anymore. So we'll see how this develops, but it was an interesting piece. Before we jump into what's going on with the largest tech companies, like I promised, because they do have impact on our money and, of course, onto the markets as a whole, I did want to bring up the piece that the Congress has been meeting about the next stimulus. There are some conflicting reports, and there are some stark and stern sort of warnings being announced by a few different news providers. I want to say Reuters and Bloomberg, maybe, don't quote me on that, are basically saying that so far the $600 a week unemployment extra payment is likely not going to appear in this next plan. And as you know, all of that stuff stops and expires in only 3 to 4 days. So there's not a whole lot of time left, and there's going to be a large number of people that are going to be left without this money. Now, for some folks, they absolutely need this money to be able to make some bills. For some folks, they've been using this money to continue to consume and spend, which has been definitely helping the economy. When this goes away, there is a larger potentially problem that is looming right around the corner. And of course, it impacts people who are unemployed, and it also impacts the economy as a whole. And so that's the reason why I have been watching it, and we're watching it here on Money Matters, and we're going to be doing this stuff consistently, updating you on what's going on. But now that we covered all of that stuff and we talked about it, you know that there are basically some of the largest companies out in the world, tech companies that are basically leading the market drastically, right? And so there is the whole concept of what's going on with these companies, and one of those is Google. Google has been having a lot of challenges, as has Facebook, as has Amazon. Sort of, not really, but it's predominantly Google and Facebook that are dealing with the large challenges. And the reason that these two companies are dealing with a lot of challenges is because they are sort of like public utility companies, right? They allow you to, or they don't, but they should be allowing you to exercise the freedom of speech, which is protected by the Constitution here in the United States. In some other countries, you may not necessarily have that, but here in the United States, you absolutely have that piece. And Google, through obviously YouTube and its ads and search engines and all of those different pieces, they have been reportedly, banning some of the things, as his Facebook utilizing not just Facebook, but Instagram, WeChat. And so they buy all these different communication platforms and then they control them and use them for their own benefits. There's a lot of problems that are happening, and I want to start with kind of what's going on and give you a very large picture of what's happening and the challenges that these companies are having. A lot of stuff that I have today does actually talk about Google. So let's do it. Let's talk about it. So there was allegedly a glitch, potentially a glitch happening with the Google search engine, that it was hiding and not displaying at all any conservative or alternative media websites from search results for hours. This all happened yesterday, y'all, yesterday evening or afternoon, depending on where you're located in the world. Or maybe morning, this morning, if you are somewhere else. Google excluded major conservative and alt media outlets from its search results for hours, hiding many, many sites. And people, of course, took it to Twitter to talk about how they cannot find their websites that they were looking for. And they simply have disappeared. You can find Wikipedia components about it, but not like the websites themselves. And it's a very interesting thing. People are definitely reporting this stuff. While most of the affected sites hailed from the right side of the political spectrum, leftist sites whose views don't conform to prevailing orthodoxy also appear to fall victim to the purge. And it's very interesting. They're saying, hey, not just this, but some of these people are also being prohibited, and people were definitely tweeting. Google was quick to kind of jump in. They said, hey, we're aware of an issue. We're looking at to see what's going on. We're investigating. And then after a few hours, they were working again normally. And they're saying, there are some people, of course, jumping in and saying, this is maybe a test run of how they will be interfering with the 2020 election and what's going on with that. So there's all these different websites that are being blacklisted, and that this kind of should be talked about. And in many of my reports here, as well as some of my classes, I talk about whenever you deal with the centralized entity and centralized database, there's always a potential that you could be blacklisted as a user, that you could be shadow banned, which is basically you don't even know that you're banned, but nobody can find you. But like if they enter like your specific domain, like .com and stuff, you might pop up. But if they're just, you're doing blogging and news announcements and all of that stuff, you don't show up anywhere. That's shadow ban. And so there's all of those things are definitely possible. And it seems like that is definitely what's happening, and has been kind of announced here. Now, Google did basically come in and release a statement acknowledging that there was an issue, and they were basically saying that we do acknowledge that there's an issue, but we're not like necessarily politically affiliated, and we have fixed it, and we don't really care to do the political piece. However, there are some whistleblowers that have been either released by Google or maybe still working at Google. We just don't know who they are. They're not released. They said that the company has multiple blacklists for both YouTube and regular web search, one of which includes many of the sites that went missing on Tuesday. And so they're saying that, this is one of those things that is going to happen. We do know that there was an internal communication in 2016 that employees basically were asked to bury or block the search from conservative outlets right after current President Trump, was elected, to sort of hide some of those different things. And then, of course, they have released it, but now it always comes with a fact check. And instead of just blocking it. So one of those things that is very interesting to kind of pay attention to what's going on, because I think it has much deeper indications as to what's going on. Now, I don't know where I stand on the whole thing. I do personally think that it's very, very weird that only certain sites are blocked, but anything is possible. If they indeed have blacklists and they did an update, and maybe that update triggered some of that code, Maybe that could be a reason why we've seen some of the stuff change. But is it also possible that, like somebody said, this is a test run for the election? Is that possible? Sure, anything is possible. I think anything is absolutely possible these days. But let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comment section of what you think of why this is and how this is. I do find it very, very interesting. And so I do think that there's definitely something bigger going on than just a glitch. And the reason for that is because there are additional reports that are coming out that are sort of happening when it comes to Google and some of the things that they are doing or not doing. And so let's kind of go in and cover that. So one of the pieces you might be aware of, you might not be aware of, is that there is a $5 billion lawsuit in the U.S. For Google that is tracking private internet use. This Google was sued in a proposed class action accusing the internet search company of illegally invading the privacy of millions of users by pervasively tracking their internet use to browsers set in private mode. It seeks at least $5 billion, accusing the Alphabet Inc. unit of surreptitiously. Uh, hold on. I gotta work on this. I'm stuck with this word right here. Right here. Suri. I got nothing, y'all. I got nothing. Oh my gosh. I've been speaking English, I swear to you, for over 2 decades. But I am stuck on this one. Surreptitiously, uh, collecting information about what people view surreptitiously, collect information about what people view online and where they browse. And they're saying that they have been able to prove that every time you open a new incognito tab, websites might be able to collect information about your browsing activity. And so they are basically suing Google to say, this is not okay, because if you set it on private, it should be private. But again, if you own the darn thing, you can do whatever you want. And here is my sort of take on this whole thing. I'm not necessarily all the way to the left. I'm not necessarily all the way to the right. I can see both sides of the spectrum. I actually personally believe in much smaller government, because typically when a government is too big, things don't seem to work out as well. So maybe I am a libertarian. I don't know. That's what I've been told. I have no clue. I'm not affiliated with either side of the spectrum. And honestly, I don't think that one side is any better than the other. Personally, I believe that when somebody gets into the power, and there's money to be made, and they're able to personally benefit and personally help their friends, family, and network, they will do it, which is why things never really, truly improve. Clearly, I am jaded when it comes to politics, because probably of places where I come from and my experience, as limited as it is about it, which is why I'm like, I don't even engage into it. I'm not even interested. Again, I don't know where you stand. Let me know. I am super open to people having all kinds of views, and I think that that is important. And I always curiously inquire about it because I just want to learn. That's really what maybe that's what my political stance is. I just want to learn. Is there a party like that? Is there like an education party? We just want to learn. That's all we want to do. Uh, but interesting piece that is kind of happening with Google is that I know people are saying that it's a private company, but when it's the only place where you can actually communicate, especially now with COVID, everybody's shut down, you got to keep distance, you can't have large parties. All of us go online to do this stuff. And so now all of a sudden it becomes a utility company. That's just kind of where I view it. And so it's same way that, my gas company can shut off my gas because my view may differ from theirs in the political spectrum, or I prefer to wear my own t-shirt design as opposed to somebody else's. They can't shut off my heat or electric. because they're a utility company, right? As private as they are, I still gotta pay them for the service, but that's kind of how it works. I feel kind of weird that you would have a similar concept happen with somebody like Google, for example, and yet they do have a power to basically, I don't know, take it all away and hide it off. That's just kind of how I feel about it. That's kind of where I stand. I don't know. You let me know where you stand and how you feel about the whole thing. But now it's not over quite yet, because we are seeing additional piece that is happening when it comes to Google and Alphabet Inc. And that is that Ripple, I don't know if you knew about this, but Ripple sued YouTube over cryptocurrency scams. Blockchain firm Ripple sued Alphabet Inc., YouTube, on Tuesday, alleging the video sharing platform failed to protect consumers from cryptocurrency giveaway scams that use fake social media profiles. And so they're basically saying that, they got to go in and do a better job of censoring. So now I very much feel for Google as well, because you have so much traffic kind of happening. And on one hand, we're saying, no, 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 don't censor anything. On the other hand, we're saying, yeah, 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 you got to censor this stuff. And so now they were like, y'all going to have to make a decision here, because what you're asking of us is nearly impossible. And so welcome to the new age of that, of information, of scams and everything. What Ripple was saying is that for every scam, giveaway, fake conspiracy that is taken down, multiple more pop up nearly immediately. YouTube and other big technology and social media platforms must be held accountable for not implementing sufficient process for fighting these scams. And it kind of goes in and talks a little bit more about what's going on, and they are like, they just want like certain badges and all these different things to say like, hey, you got to protect us and our special interests. And so now everybody wants to protect their special interests. And like I said, they're being sued as well. So now they're having glitches, right? They're being sued in Europe for the income and for tax payments and those kinds of things. They're being sued now for the whole like banning of the allowing for the search in the protected category, which I really do agree with this one. And then now you have an additional one happening as well. I told you, it's like back to back to back. I mean, I feel for these companies now. I'm not a big fan of them at all, but like, when you have a business and you're trying all these different things, and I agree, some of the stuff is very scammy and very unethical, in my humble opinion. But some of the stuff is like also really rough, because like, one thing after another that is kind of coming in. And maybe we could make an argument to say some of the stuff was brought in by them themselves, right? But some of the stuff maybe not. I don't know. Let me know what you think, y'all. But here we go. Google, Facebook, Twitter face class action lawsuit for banning cryptocurrency ads. Here we go. There's more stuff, and this one is brand new, hot off the press. Cryptocurrency businesses are taking Google, Facebook, and Twitter to court in a class action lawsuit that could cost the social media giants $300 billion. The plaintiffs say that their businesses have been hurt by Google, Facebook, and Twitter banning crypto ads on their platform. Cryptocurrency companies and individuals are taking Google, Facebook, and Twitter to court over banning their cryptocurrency ads from January 30th, 2018 to the present. The plaintiffs claim that their businesses have been harmed when the three social media giants all banned cryptocurrency advertising in 2018. And I mean, I would argue now, is it right, wrong to have banned it? Again, we can have an argument. I think everybody has an opinion on that, right? But interesting piece is that I think that yes, if you are unable to advertise, then yes, potentially that does have an impact onto your ability to scale the business faster and make money faster, right? Because a lot of ways that we learn about things is through advertising, right? Whether that is online, on radio, mail that you receive driving down the freeway, and you see those billboards that are being displayed, and all kinds of interesting ways that people and companies get and to advertise and to do things. Like, for example, I don't know if you knew about this. I thought this was really interesting. Recently, I read that McDonald's did something very interesting on the freeway in LA. They decided to plant this yellow plant that is protected by law, and they planted the seeds in the M arc. So now, when you drive down the highway, there's this beautiful M for McDonald's arc in the yellow flowers that is highly endangered species that is protected and nobody can touch it. I mean, talk about potentially like immoral way to do it, but also very ingenious way to do it, that nobody will basically be able to touch your advertisement, and it's free. Now, how they got the seeds is beyond me. I don't know all that stuff, but that's kind of what they did. Then I've also heard of the news of a company that would basically, if you call them, they would go in and patch a hole in your street, in your neighborhood, and the local city, the local government gave them the right that once they patch it, they can actually brand it with their logo. Another way to advertise, which I thought was a very cool way to advertise as well. Very interesting piece. I don't remember like what company or what area. So if you know about it, let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comment section. Super excited to be able to kind of learn exactly what it is. It's been a while since I've learned about that stuff, but very interesting piece. So yeah, when we go into the ads, we can definitely argue that advertising is a key component to making money, which is why companies and businesses are always looking for interesting, unique ways to advertise to keep their brand on everybody's mind, to get everybody to sort of use their products and services. So when they're being banned, of course, I will argue that their businesses and profitability is being harmed. A class action will be brought into the Federal Court of Australia against the social media giant. And they're basically saying that in Australia, there is a law that prohibits any arrangement, any concerted practices that have the purpose or effect to likely affect the ability for somebody to be able to compete. And so even if it doesn't meet the restrictions, if you do anything that could prohibit a competition, that is not necessarily illegal. And so they're using that, it sounds like, to be able to bring this to court and to fight it. And they're saying that the three social media giants together control a very large percentage of the online advertising market, which I agree they do, and not just in Australia, but I would argue around the world. The suit currently has 600 million worth of claims, but could grow to 300 billion according to reports. The law firm is seeking more claimants to join the lawsuit. Anyone worldwide who was adversely affected by the crypto ad ban announcements has a claim and can join the class action lawsuit. They include anyone holding cryptocurrency in 2018 from January 28 to December 31st or later in limited cases. Persons holding or Steam or Hive cryptocurrency on chain wallet at any time also qualify, as are Mt. Gox creditors and owners of crypto businesses, exchanges, wallet providers, ICO projects, miners, and advisors. So basically, anyone whatsoever who's ever had anything to do with crypto does have a legit claim. And that actually includes me now, it turns out. So I didn't even know it, but apparently I qualify when it comes to this stuff. So it's very, very interesting to do this, and that this is happening. You might qualify as well. So another reason why I wanted to share this with you. But again, it brings in a point that, when things are being banned, it does have an effect. And I have been definitely on the part of, my business stuff has been banned from advertising. Your business might have experienced for different reasons. And they're always like different things. And, I'm not going to go into the reasons as to why we were banned on advertising on Facebook. But we were, and it has a lot to do with their policies, the way they're written. They're interpreted differently by different employees. And so we follow what their employees guided us, but those employees clearly guided us wrong, because the customer service and advertising marketing side of the business does not to communicate with the tech side of the business. So tech side of the business has one set of rules, marketing side of the business has one set of rules, and if you follow the marketing but not tech, you will get banned, and there's nothing that marketing can do about it. So guess what? Facebook could care less about anything else. It's all about the tech and the algos. So it's a very interesting piece. And of course, that's just kind of how it is. So we'll see kind of how this whole thing plays out. But anyways, wanted to bring it to you and to your attention. And as you can see, that these tech companies are definitely struggling in many different ways. Again, right, wrong, indifferent, I don't know. You let me know how you feel about it, and I'm going to have a glass of water or a sip of water. Okay, so now that we talked about this stuff, we've also talked about the tech companies being the companies that really drive the market. We've been covering that when it comes to NASDAQ, when it comes to S&P 500, all these different things. But now I want to talk about the concept that I mentioned earlier when we started the episode to talk about, can VIX tell us if the S&P is in a bubble, and could we expect a crash? And so here is an article that we're going to uncover and talk about. There is a growing concern that the U.S. stocks are playing the tech-driven bubble phase of the late 1990s. We talked about it here on Money Matters, I want to say last week. Back then, the VIX generally held above 20. In every other sustained rally back to 1990, it went below 20 and generally stayed there for years. When the VIX is rising quickly, you can be sure the stock prices are likely falling. And when the VIX is heading lower after a spike, you know the S&P is recovering from a recent drop. This is really important for us to know and understand. And if you don't, now this is a key component for you to be watching. Remember, I always say you want to go in and learn things to become sort of sovereign individual, to understand what's going on in the markets and how you can benefit from it. And one of the goals of Money Matters is to raise your awareness, but also educate you, because we are sponsored by One Deal Away. And, One Deal Away is an educational company that really helps you become a sovereign individual when it comes to your money and help you become financially independent. That's really the goal of the whole thing. Okay, so now where do we find ourselves today? Well, the VIX declined to 24.46 and the S&P rallied to $3,252. Now, this is coming in, and this is the sort of the high into post-COVID place. The average of all VIX closes back to its start in 1990 is 19.4. Standard deviation for VIX over that time is 8.1 points. Today, VIX is 24.46 level, and it's well within one standard deviation, with 27.5 being the upper band, indicating that the option markets think we are not set up for another bout of market volatility in the near future. And one of the things to also note, in case you don't, we've covered it on the channel, but you might have not watched, so you can watch more in depth detailed stuff about it. But the Credit Suisse has delisted TVIX, which was an easy ETF to participate in the VIX, in the volatility index, and to be able to potentially make money when that puppy goes up through the roof. But now we're seeing that it's been staying pretty much sort of sideways, maybe slightly downish, so not much happening there. And it's basically, as you can see, the report is saying, because it's so low and there's not much movement, we're not experiencing another bout of volatility. Now, it is also the comforting messaging, but it's also acknowledging one of the things. Monday's breakout in S&P and correlated breakdown in the VIX was entirely due to the tech sector, plus Facebook, Google, and Amazon, right? So it's those large companies that are driving the whole thing. And when they talk about the tech sector, we've already discussed here, because they're saying tech sector plus Facebook, Google, and Amazon. And I'm saying tech sector is Facebook, Google, Amazon, potentially Netflix, right? Those kinds of pieces, because we've seen that they are driving vast majority of the market, and every move of it really is concentrated in these handful of stocks, right? In the fangs, as they call them, right? So no other industry groups were in the green on Monday. So this is the only tech sector is the only one. And again, tech sector is really the fangs. So we have 5 companies that are driving the market. So that's something that you need to pay attention to and understand. There was, of course, another period in the market history with similar fundamentals, and we can take a look at the VIX across multiple cycles to see what we can learn. So I'm going to take another sip of water. Apparently, I am very, very, very thirsty today while you take a look at the chart. Okay, so what are you noticing, right? You will notice that their recessions are here in the red, right? You will notice that there's sort of the spike. Then we have this like almost like a smiley face or a U cup formation or whatever, right? So then you go up. We've seen this little bit more jagged thing from the mid 90s up until like early to mid 2000s, right? Like you saw a little bit, not as easy. I mean, this is a very clear and easy pattern. This is a very clear and easy pattern. This is a bit more jagged, which is a bit more similar to right here, right? But you can see that it went down, then VIX went up, and then it kind of hit on back down, and this is kind of where we are right now. Now, what they're basically saying is let's focus on what happened from 97 to 2000. This was a relatively unusual period in market history. So 97 is going to be what? This is 95, 96, 97. So that's about here till about here, right? And so you can see that this is an unusual part of it. And it's saying that it's relatively unusual because it was higher than average VIX readings with stellar S&P 500 returns. Now that's another piece that is interesting. They're saying consider how similar the setup is in 2020 to the 1997 to 2000 time period. So let's take a look. So we are having 97. So we said 95, right? 96, 97, 98. No, 97 is right here, right? I think. So here to here, and they're saying the similar piece is happening here, where we're going to see this like really weird, potentially more volatility happening, but performance within S&P. And they're saying it's very similar setup, except now a handful of very profitable big tech companies dominate important verticals, as opposed to the free-for-all. All of the markets are kind of happening. What happened with the dot-com bubble crash? What they're basically saying is that the good news is VIX will tell us if we're in another speculative bubble, because if the hand we have to play, we will see the fear stay mostly above the 20. So what they're saying is that the VIX is going to stay above 20 if we are basically seeing another speculative bubble, and we could see it potentially go a bit higher. This won't be necessarily a sell signal, just as it wasn't in 97, but it will be a sign that we're in different sort of market from the ones we usually see after a crisis. And typically after a crisis, we see something like this. We have crisis, we drop down, and there's not much happening. But it's interesting that they are, and this might be a bit clearer right here, but it's interesting that they're drawing the conclusion over from 97 to 2000, right? That is happening, where we have potentially a cleaner and clearer spectrum happening as well. That you can see the jagged piece happening here from the 2008-9 fiasco, right? We were super high. We kind of went down. The stock market started to go up, right? It started to go straight on up, and we could see the VIX, while it was overall trend was down. You can see the overall trend was down, right? The lower highs and lower lows, that's a downtrend. But we did see the spikes throughout, even 2010 to 2014 and 2015 to 2019, right? We've seen the spikes kind of happening, even though the market was going in. So that could be a potential sort of where we are right now, that the market could continue to go on up, while the VIX is sort of doing the weird stuff anyways. And you know what? With all of the printing and Fed buying everything, there's no way that the prices cannot go up, at least short term. Now, if they change, if they switch of what they're doing, then yes, but right now, as much as it doesn't make sense, as much as it's a zombie economy, as much as it's super weird, with them consistently pumping money into it and buying at nauseum, it markets go up when it's being bought. It's that simple. So it that's kind of where I see it. Now, when they start changing their philosophy and stop buying and stuff, that's going to be a carnage of an epic proportion. But again, we'll see kind of how it all plays out. There's so many moving pieces in it. And, if you're going in and doing some sort of daily trades, potentially might make sense. The short term, long term, I have no clue. It is so super uncertain and it's just really, really, really risky. That's just kind of where it is. And I keep looking at fundamentals and they tell me there's no way we can go up. But, then you look at what's going on and, the economic sort of uh, trajectory that we're under the technical analysis and everything else, and it says we're going up. So there you go. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about the whole show. If you have enjoyed it, do me a huge favor, smash the like button, and I will see you tomorrow. Until then, stay forever money blessed, and do remember, you are only one deal away.